G'day. So the other day I asked for some questions for a Facebook Live I was going to do, and I got one answer from Brendan. Thank you, Brendan. And I answered that in the Facebook Live, and I got some other questions as well. And one was sent in a private message, so I thought I'd read that question out and answer it. So I won't name the person who sent it, but I hope they don't mind. I'll just read the question so that I answer it a bit more clearly. So, hey Matthew, can you have a look at it in a video at what you do when your family isn't expanding and you have? And when you're around them, it's upsetting. You feel where you were when you were a kid, and you feel the only way to connect with them now is by being a version of who you were before. I think most of us could sort of relate to this question. Maybe it's quite a universal experience. Of course, it'll play out differently with different families and different people, different kinds of connections, as they can't get where you are now. And as we can only understand or see some things as deeply as we understand or see them ourselves. So they're not going to understand you in the way you understand yourself in the world, and vice versa. I know that just loving them and holding a space for them was and always will be the higher road, but would be interested to hear your thoughts on this, and even about knowing when it's time to walk. Yeah, so thank you to the person who sent that to me. Definitely, I think it's a real, I won't say it's universal, but it's really common, that issue. So what to say about that? And the biggest thing I want to say about that is that your sense of who you are, your happiness, your taking up space in the world and feeling your right to take that and feeling comfortable in taking that really does come down to here and here. It comes down to you. So the biggest thing I actually want to say to anybody, including myself and anybody else in this, is to really put it back on yourself. I know it's hard. We want to kind of get frustrated at what others aren't doing, but that's not the path to happiness, and it's not the path to strength. The only path to happiness and the only path to strength is to come back here and fundamentally to look at what's going on up here especially, and in here, the head and the heart. One of the biggest things that's going on is projecting. And projecting is a big topic, projection, psychological projection, but it's, when we project, what we're doing is we're sending out the stuff that's going on inside here, and we're seeing it as if it's all out there, when it's actually coming from in here. But also we're making ourselves dependent on what's out there. So, of course, we're not the only being that exists, and the world's not just a projection of our minds. There are real people out there, and we love people, and we depend on people, and we're interconnected, and we're part of a system, and we rely on one another. But the magic of a human being is this mysterious consciousness that we each have that puts us at the center of our existence and feels like this kind of puts us in a unique place compared to everybody else who's an object to our subject. We have subjectivity, and everybody else is an object in that. And that's the case for everybody. So you are an object to others, and others are projecting onto you, and others are not getting what they want or need from you. This is how it happens with human beings. And so the most fundamental thing each of us has is to come back into our own psyche, into our own heart and mind, and do the work there. And so how do we do that? Well, all sorts of ways, and I can only say a couple of things. So I'll say one thing in a video. I can only say a couple of things in a video. Here's one thing to focus on. When you feel yourself becoming discomforted, that's your signal. That's your sign. When you feel a discomfort of some sort, anger, or you're being boxed in, or objectified, or whatever it is, okay, there's your sign to look at yourself. There's your sign to go inward and look at what's happening, and to look at what's happening in the mind, especially at the level of thought, which is a fundamental place that causes things. And sure, it's not the only place that causes things, but it's a place that causes things that's fundamentally in your control, or mostly in your control. You can do work there. There's the open door. So come back to thought. It's one of the primary places that causes things, the primary cause of things. There are others, but this one you can do work on. Come back to thought. And ask yourself, okay, what am I thinking? What other thoughts that are going on right now when I'm feeling disturbed like this? Because as I've talked about in other videos, I've talked about A, B, and C. There's the A standing for the event, the thing that's happening, what your parents are doing. C being the consequences, how you feel, how you react, what you do, the other things that you go on to think, the story that you weave continuously in your head afterwards. But in between is B. That's the beliefs, the thoughts, the perspective, the mindset you've got is filtering. And that's why different people have different reactions, the consequence, have different reactions in terms of emotions and behaviours, reactions, stories. They have different ones that they weave in response to the event. It's channeled by the different thoughts they have. So come back to your thoughts and say, what am I thinking right now when I'm feeling this way? What are the thoughts that are going through my mind? There's a story you'll be telling yourself, and it may have some truth to it, but I guarantee you it's got a lot of untruth to it, or a lot of one-sidedness or unfairness or something. So you come back to that and you ask that story, is this true? Okay, and so maybe it's true, but maybe it's only partially true. So you start to look at the complexity of it in terms of how true and how untrue is it. Start to break it down in that sense. And if something inside you protests, it is damn well partly true. Okay, then ask yourself, is it absolutely true? Because then you're breaking the hold of it, because the mind keeps sort of fantasizing partial truths as absolute truths when they're not, and that's where we get so pent up. So bring it down to it's not absolutely true. This is not absolutely true. So there's some important dimension of this, which is my own story that I'm weaving. That immediately starts to create freedom, and it starts to give you the freedom to create a different story. So you start to ask yourself questions like, okay, based on these partially true, which is to say partially false thoughts that I'm creating and projecting, how am I feeling and how am I reacting and what am I doing? And especially, what am I doing that creates a feedback loop with the other person and creates a feedback loop in myself where I start to weave more stories. And suddenly I feel like I'm trapped by them when it's actually me trapping myself. Because if you flip this stuff, if you deconstruct this stuff, if you explode this stuff, you do what you need to do with your thought, you'll free yourself to feel as strong as you need to feel. As strong as you need, you can feel that, and as free as you need to feel, and as happy and liberated, as peaceful as you need to feel. It comes back to deconstructing the thoughts in your own mind and replacing them with different thoughts. Because, look, when you're making these demands, you feel like when you feel like you're being kind of, put upon or squashed into a box or into an object, when you feel like those demands are being made on you, if you really investigate your own projections, you realize that you're making the demands on them too. And maybe you're saying nothing and you're not putting it out there, in that overt way that maybe they are, because they're your parent, for example. They're used to putting it out there. That was their job. That's actually their job when you were a child. But you're kind of doing the same in return, even if it's not as overt, which is probably not, if you're the child. But you are doing the same in return. You're demanding that they be other than they are. So you're protesting. These people demand, my family demands that I be other than I am, and they won't understand me. But what we're doing in return is we're demanding that they be other than they are. And we're not understanding them. They're different to us. Their way is different to us. Our complaint is that they're not understanding my way. They're not understanding that my way is different, but I'm doing the same to them. So pull apart, explode the sort of all the nonsense and bullshit that's going on up here. And we've all got a stack of it. We're all carrying bags of bullshit up here. Start to pull it apart inside yourself, because that's where you'll get the freedom and the power. And as you start to do that, you just do feel free. It's not always easy, or rather, I think it's more that it takes time and you slowly get better at it. Become more and more free. You can just let go. So thank you to the person who sent that to me. I love that. I love that question. It's such a common struggle for so many of us. So great question, and I could say all sorts of different things, I guess. And here's one thing: bring it back to yourself. Interrogate your own thoughts and your own projections, because. And I'm saying this from the point of view of enlightened selfishness, enlightened self-care. Free yourself. That's what I'm talking about here. Free yourself. That's what you want. That's the only thing you can really do. That's the biggest thing, and you actually have that capacity if you do this work. So, thank you to that person, and thank you for listening. And I'll keep the videos up.